Hey friends, welcome to the library or welcome back to the library. I have with me today Miss Author Cheryl, is it McClamrock?
Yes.
McClamrock. I get Irish vibes from that. That's wonderful.
Well, it's my husband's name, and it's kind of a Scots-Irish.
Yeah.
I guess you get the best of both worlds. I have an Italian background, so it's a nice mix. Irish, Italian, Scottish, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining, and tell us a little bit about how you got started writing.
Wow. So, as a kid, I was a voracious reader, and I was that one when we got an assignment in English class to write. I was excited. I was that nerd. So I always loved writing. I love stories. My favorites were anything fantasy, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Anything that was like that or had any kind of magic or fantasy stories. Wizard of Oz was one. I read all of those books. I loved it, and I took a lot of that into my own stories, and they kind of tell you, like, if there's a story out there that you want to read that you haven't read yet, then you need to write it. Yeah. And that's what I did. I kind of got a late start. I'm in my late 40s, and I didn't publish my first book until 2020, which now it's amazing is 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I actually had been planning that particular book for like 10 years. I had started writing it literally 10, 12 years before I actually finished it. I put it down numerous times because I got frustrated or discouraged. I was married. I am married, but at the time I was married with lots of little kids. I have 3 boys. And just the mom stuff. I was a working mom and busy taking kids here and there and doing the mom stuff. And I would only write, late at night when there was time. And I don't know, it was a journey of the heart. I kind of felt impressed by God, to write for years, but it just wasn't something I did regularly. I read all the time. I always had time for that. But when I finally got to put my thoughts and my story down, it was a struggle from the beginning. Yeah. But needless to say, I think my youngest son, he's 16 now. He was 2 or 3 at the time when I started writing my first story. Which can I show this?
Yeah.
Book? This is my first book. We're excited about this one. This is a sequel to it. I just published about
Stand in the Evil Day
a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. Should I keep it? We Stand in the Evil Day, Awakening Part 2. So needless to say, I put it down. I think he was 3 at the time, so he's 16 now. Mm-hmm. And over discouragement, and I don't know if you want the whole story on it. I got super discouraged. And he had something to do with it, my youngest. So let me tell you this. If you are a mom out there and you are struggling with your little toddlers, don't be discouraged in it. You just take it day by day and you do what you need to do, girl. But listen, so my youngest son, he had this affinity for shiny little objects. Mm-hmm. He would steal them. He would take them. He would pick them up off the ground, and I would find them in his pockets, and I would find them in the washer or the dryer, sometimes like coins or things like that. Mm-hmm. But back then, if I was writing and I would save my writing on a thumb drive, mm-hmm. It's different now. You can upload it to a cloud, Mm-hmm. I'm so excited about all of that. But back then, it was a thumb drive that, little small shiny things. And one day, I opened up the dryer and pulled out all the kids' clothes, and out came my thumb drive. And my work that I had put into my first novel was on that, and it was destroyed. And so I had a hard copy of it, but there had been like maybe a chapter or two at the time that I worked really hard on that was new on that thumb drive, and it was gone. And so I just broke down in tears, cried, and put my novel away, because I was like, there's no way I can get back all of those ideas, all of those, the hours that I had put in. And I just don't think it would be the same. And I tried numerous times to pick it back up and start again from where, what I had. And it just didn't work. I would write a couple of sentences and I would put it down. So this turned into years. I would start and I would stop. I would open it, I would read it, and I would put it back. Until, I want to say, that it was 2018. I had gotten a lot of people who would talk to me and be like, I know you're a writer, you need to write. And they would say things like that out of nowhere. We'd just be talking about nothing to do with writing. And they'd be like, you need to write, Cheryl, you need to write. Mm-hmm. And I would tear up and I would say, I just can't pick it back up. And people would pray with me and they would say, I know you're a writer and you need to write. I mean, it would just come up constantly. And so finally I said, you know what, all of this talk about me writing, and I was getting dreams about it too. I'm a big dreamer. I wake up with very vivid dreams. And I think that has to do with just how, how you create in life. And God speaks to you how in the language that you most, receive. And vivid dreams, colors, and I would dream about authors that I was reading. I would dream that they were instructing me on how to write. And it would be like crazy stuff. And I'd wake up being like, well, that was weird. Why was I, talking to that writer? Long story short, I finally said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'll start over. I'm not even going to touch that novel again, the one that I had been working on. I'm going to write a new one, a whole new idea. And I can't even tell you how many times I sat down and started my new idea. I'd write a whole page and I'd stop because it would just dry up. And I finally said, okay, God, I am going to take that novel, what I have, and I'm going to transcribe it, because all I had was the paper. I had printed out the first 6 chapters, maybe 7. And I'm going to put it back into my computer by hand as I'm reading it. And as I did that, I reconnected to the story and the characters. And by the time I finished transcribing it all back into my computer, my new cloud computer that auto-save, yay! As soon as I did that, I reconnected to the characters, I reconnected to the story, and I started to write it again. And all I can say is it was a miracle, because I did. In about 6 months, I finished the story. Now, it was bare bones. It was just like bones with nothing on it. Okay? So then I had hired a hybrid publisher, because I didn't know anything about independent publishing at the time, and I was afraid I would screw it all up. So I went and researched a bunch of different hybrid publications that would help you with the process and publish it. And I came across this one that published my first book, and they were called Kingdom Winds. Where is it? It's right here. Kingdom Winds. And they read it and they thought it was great, and they were like, but you know what, you really need some help even with your process. We're going to assign you a writing coach who's going to just help you put a little bit more to the story that you need. And I was like, okay, cool. So I got this writing coach. She stuck with me the whole time. Like she would read through it. She read the whole thing. Very encouraging. And then she'd send me chapter by chapter. Okay, I think this chapter needs a little bit more of this. I think this one needs to be rewritten. I think this one needs a little less of this. Add a little bit more characterization. We talked about dialogue. Anyway, we got to the end of it. It took another 6 months for me to get with this. She was the editor and the writing coach. And we went through my story chapter by chapter again until it was ready to be published. And I really give her a lot of credit for where I am now, because she gave me the confidence to in my writing that I didn't have prior to that, and helped me to just hone it in and hone my skills a little bit more. And my story went from bare bones to muscles and skin and a whole outfit. So it was great. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot. Excuse me.
Okay. That's amazing. Do you feel like the having to start and stop and losing progress of where you were affected any of your progress after that story was completed? Like moving into the next book?
That's something to think about. I thought, I think it gave me like a little bit too much, what is it? I can't think of the word. Like, I thought my next book I was going to have out in less than a year, because I think overconfidence, that's the word I was in for. I think it gave me overconfidence. I was in such this mindset of being that writer and finishing. I was like, I am going to get this sequel out ASAP. Like, in a year, I'm going to have this one out. And it won't be the 10, 12 years it took me on that first one. And boy, I was wrong. I think life came and got me. And everything that happened in 2020.
Yeah.
And I thought, you would think, because we were sitting around at home more, that I'd have a lot more time to write. But that was the opposite of the case. Yeah. I did not. I had a lot less time to write than I did. I was running a business with my husband that we were trying to keep from going under. Mm-hmm. And it was just 24/7, it seemed like. And so that year after I published, it just came and went with just... like, all I had on page was like ideas and maybe the beginning. And I just I felt defeated, I think, because I thought I was going to be a certain way and do a certain thing. And I had this idea of what I wanted for my writing goals, and I missed it. And so I had to kind of like get through that and kind of rethink my whole... what does it mean to be a published author now, and what are my responsibilities? And just because I didn't finish in the time frame I thought I would doesn't mean I'm a failure, Yeah. So this whole like remaking of my process. So I had a lot of start and stops again, completely different than my old start and stops. Obviously, my kids are older now. I can't use that as an excuse. And part of it was just like discipline, to be a writer that consistently comes out with good stuff and material. You have to be consistent and disciplined. And I still kind of have that struggle of being consistent and disciplined, because I've had another book rolling around in here for the last year that I've barely gotten 4 or 5 chapters into. But I think as writers, you gotta accept where you are and learn from your past trials and errors, and just keep moving forward. Like, I always encourage people, as long as you're writing, you're not giving up. You're not saying, well, I didn't do this correctly, or I didn't do that correctly, so I'm just going to give up on it. And I think, don't give up. Just keep doing it. Whatever that is. It might be 1 paragraph a week, but as long as you're still working it and putting what's in here into the page, I think you're answering that call.
Give it your all whenever you can.
Yes, absolutely.
How much of, well, I'm going to phrase it this way, but some people don't always have the answer this way. How much do you think of your personal life, like the people surrounding you, bleed into your stories?
Oh, all the time. I think it's therapy. For me, especially that first one, I put everything I was dealing with or had dealt with in my life into that story. And everything that I felt like God was teaching me and had taught me through my struggles, I put into that story. And I would say, and I always tell people, there's a lot of autobiography in my characters. There's bits and pieces of my story spread throughout. It's not like one character embodies that one story. It's like a lot of the characters and a lot of the plot have a lot of bits and pieces of my story. So you'd have to like really put a bunch of different things together to get the whole thing, but it's in there. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's where you find your inspiration for this story from the beginning?
Yes. And also, I took pieces of some of the best stories I've ever read in my life and used those as inspiration. Especially my first book. I was also an English literature major in college, so I had to read all the classics like The Fairy Queen. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Not that one, but I have some on my shelf.
Yeah, there's stuff I've never would have picked up on my own that, you take a college class and they force you to read it. And then at the end, you're like, wow, I never would have picked that book up, but it was very, like, incredible and inspirational. What was the other one? Chaucer, can't remember. They were on this pilgrimage, and then you got a story from each person on the pilgrimage. God, I forgot the name of that one. That was a really cool one. Of course, it was not there. And then Edgar Allan Poe, all of his stuff. So I took bits and pieces of things. It might have been like The Raven from Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven poem, and you'll see a raven in my story that says nevermore, and I found that there was certain people that I would talk to after they read the story that picked up my little breadcrumbs of I'd put a little breadcrumb from a classic in there. They'd be like, oh, I noticed that you had this or that from this particular classic in there. I thought that was so clever, and I'm like, I think that's really cool that you could pick up on it. It shows me that you're well read, and that was an homage to just my history of love of classic literature, and then all the stuff that I read in college that I actually enjoyed.
Yeah,
that's a whole lot that I enjoyed in those classes, but the ones that I did that made that impact, I included in my book too. So that was really fun, actually.
I don't know that many people actually enjoy the classics so much as it's a rite of passage. And then after you're through with it, you're like, okay, maybe it was... Because I was talking with someone earlier and we were discussing Shakespeare and how it's not easily accessible, but the few that are because they've made such an impact, but they're preserved in the language. Yeah. So when you're trying to read them, it is so hard for your mind to wrap around the language. And then once you can get past it and you finally get a feel for the story, you can then see everything else that has come from that. Because like we were talking about, I said, if you're looking at Romeo and Juliet, for instance, is a beautiful story. It's an extremely tragic story. Yeah. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but look at the impact it's had on the modern romance world. Yeah, yeah. Because there are so many books that have these enemies to lovers, or they're from opposing families or something like that. Some form of that all stems from Romeo and Juliet in some manner, whether that was intentional or not when you're writing it. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, it's ingrained into the culture, and you don't even know it. Even some of the phraseology that Shakespeare uses is ingrained in our culture, and people don't even know they're quoting Shakespeare. But I love Shakespeare. I mean, it's hard to read. Shakespeare's hard to read, and I think we do a disservice to Shakespeare reading it. Because it's supposed to be watched. It's supposed to be a play. So when you watch them and you're able to, like, I love that they put Shakespeare into movies that you can, rent or buy. Some of my favorites, like Much Ado About Nothing. I mean, it's such a silly, romantic story, and it's so entertaining. It's so enjoyable. But if you read it, it's you don't get it. Yeah. But then you watch it, and you're like, oh my God, I love that story. It was such a great movie.
Yeah, Julius Caesar, Othello, Hamlet. You don't get the full impact unless you're watching them. And even then, like, yes, there is stuff to take away from reading it, and inspiring your own version of events and getting that picture, trying to get your creativity flowing. But to truly immerse yourself, you would have to be in theater or watching it on a film of some sort.
Yeah.
And I feel like that speaks a lot to nowadays attempts to recreate novels into movies.
Yeah. Because those novels are meant to be read.
Right. And it's like we went backwards. Like we took Shakespeare's playwrights that were supposed to be dramatized and have all these feelings and have people acting them out and just be flourished. And I mean by flourished by accents and just extra. Like that is the whole point of having a play, is you get immersed into it. Whereas whenever you're reading it, there's a certain, not necessarily detachment, but it's meant to flow differently.
Yeah. I'm that one that criticizes everything that I've read that is on screen. My husband can't stand watching movies with me that I've read the book beforehand. I'm like, oh, that's not how it was in the book.
Nope.
That's not how it was. Oh, they did it so wrong. And I'm like,
God, the worst. I feel like the worst ones. I haven't watched It Ends With Us yet because I don't know that I could watch it. Reading it was hard enough, but I really did not like the Hunger Games series.
Yeah.
I didn't, and I don't even want to touch the Ballad of Songbird. I don't.
You know what? I read the Ballad of Songbird, whatever it's called. I did when it came out, and I actually really didn't enjoy it that much. I mean, I enjoyed aspects of it, but this is one I felt like she wrote to be a movie. When I was reading it, I'm like, she's writing this for the movie. Like, she's not writing this for us. That's what I felt like while I was reading it.
Yeah.
Whereas I didn't get that at all from the first book. And I was completely immersed in those books, and I got every bit and piece of it. And like you said, like when it went on to the screen, there was things I liked that they did, of course. But yeah, it was. I didn't feel like it was the way it should have been, when you're reading it. But that one, I was a bit disappointed because I did feel like she should have just written the manuscript for the movie. She shouldn't have even published it. Kind of like what J.K. Rowling did for the prequels. What were they called? The animal.
Yeah.
I'm so bad. I can't remember. But the ones that came out after that were about the guy that talked to animals or whatever. Like, those didn't come out in book form. She just wrote it for the movies, and I'm like, that's acceptable, I guess. And but this one, like, I
understand her desire to express in some way the history of how things became and why Snow was the way he was, but I felt like, okay, every villain has a backstory. We get it. We know that's what it is. But at the same time, there needed to stay this animosity of, like, things ended the way they ended.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was like, this is a ploy to, and somebody's probably going to end up upset when they hear this, but it really felt like it was a ploy just to stick your foot back out there and gain a little bit of extra off of what you already have for the Hunger Games.
Yeah. I didn't want to feel a human attachment or a human understanding with Snow.
No, not at all.
And I felt like she did a good job of showing that he was always going to be this selfish, narcissistic individual.
Yeah.
But there was that connection from where he came from and trying to get you to understand why he is the way he is. But yeah, I wasn't really cool and on board with that myself either. He was a pretty despicable character, and yeah, I didn't watch the movie either on that one. I think I wanted to just, okay, I read it and I put it to the side, now I want to forget about it.
I didn't read that one. I've just seen pieces of the movie because it's been everywhere, and I kind of have an idea of what it is because social media nowadays just can't get off with stuff.
Yeah.
But it was that certain level of disappointment whenever I heard about it, because I was like, is this supposed to be like a continuation of something else that's happening after, or is this supposed to be... And then somebody explained it was the backstory, and I was just like, but why do we need the backstory? Like, sometimes it's okay to have a villain that doesn't have this massive backstory that needs to be explained why they are the way they are. Sometimes people just make those choices. Like,
yeah, I agree.
And like, it was enough, because at the end of the third book, whenever Katniss and President Snow are talking, and I remember this vividly because it was something that really sat with me, she was so angry because her sister had died. And when he had been sick, and she's coming to see him, and she's finding out he's sick, and she says something about her sister, and he was like, I didn't kill your sister. Like, why would we bomb our own people? You know what I mean? Like, and he was just like, that makes no sense. That doesn't give me any power. And in that moment when she has that realization, it's like, it's not like he's just doing it because he wants to. Like, there is always a reason behind his actions. And why would he invite all of his people to his home for sanctuary to turn around and hurt them? Like, it didn't make any actual logical sense. So she's just sitting in that anger. And I was like, that should have been enough.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it was enough, because I was like, okay, he's not necessarily a great person. A lot of people aren't. But at the same time, when you have someone who has been in power for that long, when you're looking at a story like this, everything is done extremely strategically. So I was just like, it doesn't make sense for... Yeah. This... And my brain just works differently than some others. Anyways, should we get off my soapbox?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Who was... You were an avid reader when you were a kid. Who was your go-to? Like, your number one favorite?
Gosh, it changed years. As a young preteen, I went, like I said, I think I went for everything that I could find that was fantasy. So from C.S. Lewis to, I think I read the Black Cauldron novels, the Oz novels, gosh, and there was the Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, anything that got you into another realm that was fantasy. I really enjoyed, actually, the Greek myths. I used to gobble those up too. And then as I got, into my teen years, I had this, Stephen King phase. And I think a lot of people go through that. I'm Gen X, so there's this running joke that we're all kind of jaded because we all went through this time in our lives where we read all the Stephen King novels. So I did. I went through years where I read probably everything he wrote. And I can't even tell you now. It wasn't even until my college years that I started really going back to some stuff I think I felt like I missed out on because I was such a fantasy, adventure type of person. Like I started reading Anne of Green Gables and Little Women in college because I never went through that girly book stage. The Little House on the Prairie books. I did read a couple of the Little House on the Prairie books as a kid, but then I went back and in college and I finished them because there's 10, 12.
There's quite a few.
So I think maybe I went through this metamorphosis of trying to, go back. I was a kind of a tomboy too, and rereading stuff that all my girlfriends read when they were a kid. I loved Little Women when I read in college. I couldn't get enough of it, and so I think there's 4 actually. People don't really know this. There's 4 books in that series, and so you follow Jo after she gets married, and she has a home for boys. And anyway, it's really an interesting little follow up. So yeah, loved that stuff. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Maybe it was too much.
Well, my follow up was: do you feel like that pushed you in the direction of where your writing is today?
Absolutely. I still love fantasy more than anything. I mean, and then of course I raised 3 boys, and so their favorite stuff was to watch the superhero movies. So I've watched every Marvel movie.
Yes.
All the Star Wars movies, which I watched, the original Star Wars growing up. And so all of that, I mean, there's a little bit of all of that in my novels. You got a good bit of everything. It's kind of a fantasy hero adventure with a little bit of faith sprinkled in, because that's close to my heart, and that's where I came through a lot of learning and healing is through my relationship with God. So,
do you still read while you write?
Oh yeah. I am always reading about 5 or 6 books at the same time.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading now? Okay. So I just finished He Who Fights with Monsters. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't, but take notes.
Wow. So backing up a couple steps. So I always have 1 or 2 books I'm listening to on Audible, 2 or 3 on Kindle, and maybe 1 or 2, physical books that I'm reading at the same time. Some nonfiction, some fiction. Of course, I just buzz through the fiction really quickly, and the nonfiction books take me a little longer because they require a lot of interaction and thought, But anyway, He Who Fights with Monsters, it's called a lit RPG, and basically it is set up like a game, what is that RPG? What is that called in game? Role-playing game. Okay, so I mean, wow! I didn't know I was going to enjoy it that much. It came. I don't know. Do you listen to Audibles?
Yes.
Okay. So you know how it says, okay, based on what you've read in the past, it gives you all these suggestions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it came up as a suggestion for me, and I was like, well, that looks interesting. So I got it, and there's 11 books in the series, apparently.
Oh, okay.
What I got myself into.
Yeah.
Okay? But it's a really, really long one, apparently, over 900 pages written, and so the Audible was very long, but it was great. It was entertaining from the first sentence. Right, this guy wakes up, and it's what's really got me is that it starts exactly like my first novel. So I was a little bit jealous because he did it so much better than me. He really did. When this guy wakes up into this world, he went to sleep in his bed, and when he wakes up, he's in another realm. And he's completely naked, and he doesn't have any hair. Like, no hair, no eyebrows, nothing. And he's thrust in the middle of, like, he's being chased by cannibals.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has this, when you're playing a video game, like a screen that he can see that has his power and how much energy he has and all this other stuff. So he can see this interaction. And so he goes through this world, and he's gaining, like, power and weapons and mana, and he meets all these other different characters. And anyway, it's a super interesting and fun adventure.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. And I couldn't stop listening to it. Like, I think it took me maybe a week and a half or so to finish it. But anyway, so that was what I just finished maybe a couple days ago. And so I'm still waiting for my Audible thing to,
Yeah. Can you look at it?
Get another one, at the end of the month. So then I'll be getting book 2. What am I reading? Let me see. I am reading. Should be here. No. What am I reading? What am I reading on my Kindle? Okay. So there's a book called Snatched from the Flames, which is a true story about this man who was brought up in the occult, and he became an assassin.
Oh.
And then he was saved and got out of it because they were basically, to create an assassin, they start from childhood with abuse.
Mm-hmm.
They abuse them to the point where they disassociate, and they have multiple personalities. That they have a personality that's normal and a personality that's an assassin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of time in his life he didn't remember that he was this other person. And so that, this is his journey of finding out who he was and who he is and getting out of it. So it's super interesting. And that's called Snatch from the Flames. And then the fiction book that I'm reading on Kindle is called The Burning Sea by A.E. Rain. So it's book 2 in a fantasy series. So here we go. And I think I have another book, a physical book. There's a couple physical books that I'm reading. But anyway, there you go. Whoa. Good stuff. So my brain's always like,
yeah.
And people are like, how do you read so many books at the same time? And I'm like, I can do it. That's just how I roll. That's how I roll, And I'm not confused, and I always remember where I was in the book that I'm reading or listening to. And I'm writing a book at the same time. So there it is.
That part I'm not there with yet. I don't know about that part, but I do. I read multiple at the same time. Right now, it's Twisted Promises, the number 3 in a mafia romance.
Oh, mafia romance. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a dark romance girly. So, mafia romance, that one's by Lillian Harris. And then I'm reading Madness by Chantel Tessier, which is number 6 in her Lord series, also dark romance.
Dark romance, okay.
And then I'm listening. I use Libby and Kobo and Audible to get as much as I can because I have a long drive to work. I'm listening to Twisted Truths by P. Rain, and it is a dark academic. I don't know that I would really consider it like a dark romance because it's not. It's got some heavy topics. The brothers dealt with a lot of abuse from their father, so like they're learning to heal that through their relationships, but there's no active dark things like the other two. Like in the other two, they're not constantly like offing people, and yeah, like it's not like that. It's just they're like having to deal with their own personal trauma, but they're billionaires. And they live in this massive mansion that is called Midnight Manor, and really weird and creepy things happen.
Oh, wow.
Like in the first book, the female main character had an opera song that just randomly played and would lead her to the man. In the second one, the girl follows a glowing orb throughout the manor. And the third one, it was like some sort of wisp, like a mist that would like carry her.
Huh.
And then in this last one, it's like a line of sand.
Interesting.
And it's like supposed to be the four boys' mother guiding the women to her sons when they need the women. But it's very interesting just to that dynamic.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's like a touch of the paranormal that goes in with that. So yeah. And then I just finished 2 fantasy books back to back over the last 3 days, and they were kind of big, but Daniela A. Mara has To Steal a Bride, and it's about trolls and giants and ogres and humans, and yeah.
Wow, that sounds fun.
It was really interesting because they have this, like, humans are the slaves of giants, and the trolls are like a dying off breed that can sing through crystals that are in their chest.
Interesting.
And the ogres don't really talk to anybody. Oh, and there are elves too.
Oh.
Yes.
Even better.
So then the elves are the ogres, like long, second, third cousin, something like that, relative, but they don't get along. And basically the trolls don't approve of the giants using the humans as slaves. So then, like, every once in a while they steal humans away from the giants and set them free. Yeah. Basically, the troll king falls in love with the human, and then they have to figure out, are we going to let him is he going to actually mate with the human and, like, help save their race, even though it's going to be, like, diluting their bloodline or whatever? Yeah. And it goes through this whole thing of, like, one of the princes of the giants has an infatuation situation with the woman who the king troll mates with. So then she gets kidnapped.
Wow.
And then back and forth, and there's a war, and yeah.
Sounds like a big adventure.
It was a massive adventure, and it was like, right now I'm doing some chapter counting competitions with some friends in Discord, and so it was like, you keep track of however many chapters you have, and at the end of the month we all compare, and we're in groups, and like whoever has the largest amount of chapters has like bragging rights for the next month. And so they sounded interesting, so I picked the duet up because it's To Steal a Bride and then To Ignite a Flame, which is the second half of that couple's story. And it turned out that both of them were like 50 chapters long. And it took me over 8 hours to finish both of them, split up between work and then all of the things I did yesterday and early this morning because I'm an early riser. Yeah. So yeah, I was just like bouncing back and forth between all of them, and then got sucked into the land of trolls and giants and ogres and mystical creatures and gods and glowing crystals.
Wow, that's good stuff.
It's definitely interesting, and I like that people are not afraid to write these things. Like, the story doesn't always have to be about humans, and it doesn't always have to be this massive thing that goes into war like those did. But everybody has their cup of tea, and we're, I want to say, almost away from shaming others, but I know that's not necessarily true because there's still a lot of things going on the internet, so shame on those who shame others. But I like that, like, you write what you write, and it's not necessarily the same thing, but it's still adventure. Yeah. It still sucks you in, and you go through this up and down, and this crazy situation. I mean, some of it is legit and some of it is exaggerated. We all know that, but it's a lot of fun to, one, as a reader in whole, you get to experience it through different people's eyes, and to know that, like, the world is vastly different, and I get to see it through these stories.
That's really interesting. I'm reading one of my actual books that I'm reading is a book by Madeline L. Engel, the one that wrote A Wrinkle in Time. Are you familiar with A Wrinkle in Time?
I think so.
It's a classic.
Yes.
Classic fantasy. But she wrote this book on like creating or creativity, and it was her musings on the world of story and the world of creating. And literally this morning I was reading a portion of it, and she was talking about how story helps us, because there's this whole section of people who think that, reading fantasy or reading fiction even, or even watching movies is escapism. And in some aspects, yes, but she explained it like this. Story is how we as humans make sense of the world that we live in.
Yep.
How we process the world that we live in.
Yep.
And even process, like me, like you talked about, is how much of yourself is in your writing. So much, like I would say even a process of my own healing and therapy was writing my stories, because I was able to give voice to feelings and emotions that I had gone through in life, and give it an outward voice, even a character that could hold all of that, and have the character deal with it, in some ways. And so I love that she said that, because she lived through World War II as a child, and she talked about how the thought of war scared her, and she would write stories even as a child to deal with the feelings that she didn't know how to give voice to. And she talked about how all through the ages, people have made stories. It's how we pass along our history verbally to each other. Like Jesus, he taught in stories. He taught people parables. And so he told stories to teach lessons. And so he was just like, this is how humans process life. Yeah. And how we pass on what we've learned from one generation to the next. So there's so much in story. And if we lose, like, those who toss story to the side and say that it's just escapism, and they don't know how to experience that, they're essentially throwing away a portion of their humanity, and even their own experience and understanding and learning of life and history. Anyway, she put it so much more eloquently than I could. But
that's one thing. A lot of people make comments about romance is smut. And when you're reading it, you're just basically reading corn. This is what we're going to say. And to a degree, I would say, yes, there is a level of that in there. Not all of them. But with any story, for romance, it's teaching people to accept love and the different types of love and how to give love. What is the appropriate vision of love for some people, because they did not experience that, from their parents, or they have never experienced a spouse or a partner who has given them a safe love. And then when you look at fantasy, it would be one of those encouraging the mind, encouraging the creativity. There is also a level of most genres mix, but when you look at fantasy and adventure, those tie together a lot of times, teaching me to be courageous, brave, to embrace the journey. There is more than it seems. Life is a gift. Every day is a gift. Those sort of things. And it's like there are a lot of lessons that can be learned from written word of a story that is about someone getting thrown into someone else's life.
Yeah.
Or some random creature going on. I mean, some random creature being like I was talking about the slave to steal a bride. She learned how to love. She learned how to be brave and courageous and humble. And those are qualities that cannot always be taught.
Yeah.
It is something you actually do have to experience and learn. Sorry, my dog is... Go! Sir, take your toy and go. But, so when you just... I said all that to say, when you are someone who does not read or tosses reading aside into some category of escapism or whatever, you discredit a lot of things that can be healed and taught from those stories.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you miss a piece of life as well. Like, there are some of us and most readers who are really, really into the life. We are introverts. I would rather be at home with my nose in my book or my Kindle some days, and while there's nothing wrong with that, I also have to be forced out of my home sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's also, it tends to be those of us who are more well-read, whether that has to do with classics or with modern books. There's a certain different level of appreciation and depth of knowledge when it comes to worldly things. Yeah, you have so much more of an appreciation once you get out. I found I started going on walks on the weekends. I like to go to the local park and they have a large wraparound trail that's like over 3 or 4 miles. Right. And I'll get on a section on it and I'll walk 45 minutes to an hour, and it's just, sometimes I see deers. I'm in Northeast Texas, so.
Oh, okay. Also, I'm in South Texas, so.
Yes. So, I see deer, rabbits, squirrels. You listen to the birds. You get to see the trees and embrace the sunshine and all of those things. A lot of people, it's very easy to just oh, it's a tree, whatever. What life does that tree sustain that you missed prior, that you probably wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, when you finally get out, there's a whole new level of appreciation. Your eyes have been peeled back a little bit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just a little heart-to-heart depth today.
Absolutely.
All right, now we're going to switch back into... We're still on book mode, but maybe a different segment.
No, that was good. I mean, I love getting out and walking and experiencing nature, especially when the weather cooperates. Texas will tend to be super hot, and I just look forward to when it finally starts to cool off.
For our friends in the north, please pray for us in the south, because it is still 90 degrees and it is the beginning of fall, and I don't know if you know what fall weather is, but it is not 90 degrees. We are sweating and dying. Look, I've been in the home all day, and my AC, your AC is supposed to turn on and off throughout the day. It has not turned off all day, and I worry for my poor thing. I'm like, that bill's gonna be high.
Yeah.
Okay, back onto here. So I'm gonna safely assume that adventure fantasy would be your favorite genre.
Yes.
Yeah. I figured as much. So when you're writing your stories, we're going to go back to this, do you feel like it's easier for you to follow a set plot line, or are you more of like a pantser or quilter?
I am definitely a pantser. I have an idea of the storyline, and I know the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea of like where we're going in the like middle and end, but I don't know how we're getting there until I'm writing it. And it's happened to me with both parts of my story, that sometimes I'm just as surprised as the reader at what's happening in the story. And I'll be writing it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that to happen. And
all right, we're going there.
I'm like, wow, where did that come from? That's interesting, that kind of thing. And it's just as much of an adventure writing it as it is, for the people, I think, reading the story. So I enjoy that. In fact, I'm writing a nonfiction book now, and I'm struggling. I'm really struggling because I'm such a pantser. You cannot write a nonfiction book that way. You have to know everything that's going to happen. You have to know chapter 1, A, B, C, D, chapter 2, A, B, and I'm like, I don't know how to write this. I am not a plotter. I am not a planner. And so literally I've just been staring at the thing like, I don't know what to do next. And so I'm struggling. I need to go to a class about planning your book because it's not happening. But
yeah. So has your you said before you had an editor / the dog leaving his toys again, I guess is a gift. You said before you had an editor / writing coach. Has your process since then changed, or is it still similar?
It's still similar. I think I know now how to put more meat on the bones while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So it helped me learn where my weaknesses were, and I was able to kind of, learn what I needed to learn in order to not leave those, plot holes or, not describe enough. That was one of the things that was my, thing I had to keep going back to is I didn't describe things. I just kind of told you what was happening and went to the next thing. And nobody knew what was in the room or, what the character was wearing or anything like that. And so those kind of things I had to learn to slow down and describe. And so I've gotten much better at that. And I think I didn't use the writing coach for book 2. I don't feel like I needed it. I think from my manuscript, my first manuscript was very robust, especially compared to my first manuscript in my first book. So it was a lot easier editing process for me on the second one.
So post-editing, what does your process look like? Meaning, are you one of the ones that has like an alpha, beta, and then go to ARC, and then publish, and then, or do you do ARCs after? Do you have a street team?
You know what? I'm your bare bones basic, just learning stuff. I had a friend who was reading my book as I was writing it. I don't know if that counts as a alpha.
Alpha, beta, something like that, yeah.
And I had another friend who read it after I finished it and kind of gave me pointers. Both of those friends had read my previous books, so they were familiar with the characters and the plot line. But no, I didn't do any of that alpha, beta, and ARC readers, which literally I that much I don't know. Like I didn't know enough about it to even reach out to those type of people. Maybe on book 3.
That was going to be my next question. Do you feel like that? I don't know that it would have. Do you feel like it would have changed the outcome of where your books landed, like how they did in your first couple weeks?
I don't know enough about that process. I know that I'm really not doing well with my marketing. And so that is where I'm dropping the ball. So I don't know enough. Yeah.
I think everybody struggles with marketing, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, my first book, I think it's because it was my first book, and like people were excited for me, but like I had no issue with selling lots and lots of my first book. The second book comes along, and like I can't pay you to buy my book at this point. And those who have read it, who read the first book, said that it was phenomenal, and they could see my growth as a writer in the second book, and they loved it. But I'm having a really hard time to get readers, and so I'm just trying everything I know to do right now outside of just spending an exorbitant amount of money on marketing. I just don't have it to just get my name out there as much as possible.
Well, and I don't think that social media necessarily helps that situation either, because we live in the day and age of you don't get much of anything unless you go viral.
Yeah.
And that's hard enough to do as is anyways. And I've had some people say, like, I'm stuck in the 200, 300 range on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. And I'm like, yeah, but how many people, like, when you stand with 200 people in a room, your perception of 200 people is different. Yeah. And then, every time you're looking at TikTok, it's not necessarily the same 200 people. So, like, you're getting somewhere, but because those people are not interacting necessarily, aside from maybe a couple likes, and they're not pushing it harder. And the algorithm is hard enough to understand.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's nuts. I have no concept of how it works.
I have walked into better opportunities through Threads since it came out, as far as ARC reads and becoming part of authors' teams and such, than I have on any other platform.
I have met a lot of authors on Threads, but I don't know. I'm struggling on it because, at least me personally, I'll put out a thread that basically says, hey, I'm an indie author looking for, to connect with readers and writers. And I'll get 50, 60 people respond to it. And then I'll put out another one that's like a picture or another, it doesn't have anything to do with writing. I don't know. Maybe it'll just be like a comment on life and 0. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, are there people out there? And I don't know what it is. I haven't figured it out yet.
With Threads, it feels very random, because I have experienced the same thing. But the thing is like, for example, when I got ready to start this podcast back in March, so we've been going on for a while now, yay. But anyways, when I got ready to start it, I launched a "It's Happening" post. I was just like, I can't believe this is real. Like, I'm really going to do it. I had some edits made, for my cover for podcasts, Spotify and Apple. I had a little digital art made, and I created the actual Spotify account and the Apple account, and I got through all of that, and I was just really excited, and I posted it, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we're so excited for you. I had over 100 people, and I was like, wow, okay, this is a thing. And then I got through the first list of my friends. We got into May or so, and I had a few authors that I had personally reached out to because I had interacted with them prior, and I was like, hey, can we do some episodes? Would you be interested? And then we got into the end of May, and I had been posting updates. When the podcast went live with the first episode, I posted back on my threads, and it's like, the first episode is here. I can't believe this is really happening. Somebody pinched me, and I posted the links, and nothing. So then I did another announcement edit as the episodes kept going, and nothing. And then one day, randomly at the end of May, I posted and was like, I'm looking to connect with authors, influencers, readers, anybody who would be interested in being on a bookish podcast. And I got 10 or 15 people, so I went back and forth with them, and only 3 or 4 of them turned out to be legitimate. And so we turned around and I did those episodes, and then I was just went, I had a big group of recording throughout June and July from that. And reaching out to more authors individually. And then we got into August and I made another post. And again, every time I'm posting on my threads, it is an announcement edit of the podcast, or it is links to the podcast form so people can fill out, interest. And it's like maybe one or two here and there, one or two likes. And then last month I posted again and I was like, I'm still interested in it. And it was like thousands of people liking it. And I was like, am I having a heart attack?
What the heck?
I have more interactive authors reposting and saying this was so much fun. I really hope you guys should join, and this was a great listen. And then I have people commenting like, "Oh my gosh, this would be so much fun." And I'm like, "What happened?"
Wow.
I have been posting like literally almost nonstop about it since March, and it took this long for something to actually get through to it. And then I'm like, I have over 70 people on the forum that are asking, and
that's awesome.
I know, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I'm getting responses, and I'm trying to email people quickly about, hey, thank you for your interest. And I finally tell some of my family about it because I've been very hesitant. Whenever you hard launch things into the world, people automatically expect you to have a lot of response. And like, as we've noticed, it takes a while for things to grow. And so I'm just now at the point where I'm getting continuous views that are more than like one or two people. And now that I know that one of them is my husband regularly, I'm just like,
that's great.
I love you, but stop it. I need legitimate numbers.
Yeah.
Now that I know that, we had told my parents and his parents, and they were excited for me, of course. And my family was like, well, did you ask this cousin or this cousin? Or, I have some friends at work or so-and-so that are readers. And I was like, deer in the headlights. Which I mean, deer in the headlights. And I was like, I did not, I had to turn around and tell my mom, look, we're booked out for like the next couple months because I had this massive blast come in and I don't have enough physical time to do all of it because it's just me.
Yeah.
So I like the same as you guys. Like most of the time it's just y'all trying to do everything, the writing, and if you're a reader at the same time, and then you've got edits, and if you're carrying a team, you have to manage the team. Yeah. And then it's like I'm having to figure out how to work KDP or how to get it into the stores or whatever. And so it was like I don't have enough time to do all of this recording and then turn around and edit, and these people are going to want turnaround time to be quickly. So it was like I can't do more than like 2 episodes in a weekend, or that episode isn't going to hit until like the next month. Like that time, just that's what it takes sometimes.
Gosh, I've been wanting to do a podcast. I can't even tell you how long, and I just the whole like what you're talking about. I can't even imagine recording it and editing it and like getting it, and I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff. I can't commit to this, even though I want to really bad. I have so much I feel like I want to talk about. But
luckily, my husband and I had talked about doing a couples podcast before, and so we had started looking into the equipment and what you can do online with a virtual studio that allows you to edit right after and all of that. And so a lot of research, and I'm not one to gatekeep, so a lot of research led me to this is like a $50 mic, and it is literally almost an arm's length away from my face, and it will catch every little bitty squeak of me readjusting in this chair, and I'll have to edit it all out.
You have this thing, let me show you. Do you have this kind of thing with it?
Nope, it just directly USB plugs right into my laptop.
Oh my God, see, I got this with the mic that I ordered, and I'm like, okay, I don't forget that, because I don't know what I'm doing with that thing. What the heck am I going to do with that? And then literally, I was like, there it is, it's right next to my computer.
That was exactly why I was like, I'm good. I'm good. But I did find, so like Spotify for podcasters is a really great tool. But I found that you can find a site like Podcastle that will let you record, and you can do just audio straight, and it'll let you do as many audios as you can, and as long as once you've got them uploaded, I save them onto my computer. My computer has a large hard drive, so once I've got the audio file saved, I can delete them off the website. But you can do up to like 10 or 15 gigs, I think, of audio recording before you need to clear the space. And then after I do the recording, it immediately shows me if it's ready to edit or not, and I can do all the editing right there from the same thing. And then I can produce it and push it out to both Apple and Spotify right there so I don't have to worry about it. And then because it is its own hosting site, I can just post its link, which is an RSS. I can post its link anywhere, and somebody can open it with like Google Podcasts and still be able to listen.
That's great. I need to get to it. I gave up because of thinking it was all going to be too hard.
It's a lot. I think the hardest part for me has been staying on top of keeping an editing schedule. Like, I can always go back to other friends and be like, hey, do you want to do another episode? And we can come back. Or most authors want to do a repeat episode. Like, absolutely. Anytime we can get on and talk about what you've been reading recently, or what your last post on Instagram did, or, you know, what you're releasing. There's so many things to talk about in the book world.
Yeah.
But like, so those repeats, scheduling the actual episodes is easy, but then having to sit down and listen to myself talk.
Oh, girl. Yeah.
I told my husband, I was like, I don't know that I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
I was like, it's so much fun.
I would be the same way.
Yeah. But yeah, I have this experience is why I said all that to say this. I have the utmost respect for authors who are having to try to do all of this themselves, because that experience over six months worth of basically the same post once or twice a week, just on Threads, where the community was booming because it was a brand new site.
Yeah. And,
you know, it took forever for me to finally get noticed. And I'm like, how long does it take for these authors? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm just now seeing your stuff and I've been in the book world for years, you know, how long does it take others to get to you? And what are your posts looking like? Because I talked to another author a couple days ago, and she was like, yeah, I post like once or twice a day and I don't get very much. And I was like, I would like Instagram to at least show my stuff to my followers.
Yeah.
Like, my followers don't even know I exist anymore.
Me too. Instagram and Facebook both. Sometimes it's like crickets out there. I have like 1,000 friends on Facebook, and I have over 2,000 on Instagram. And and I've been posting for years, and I'll get, on a good day, maybe 20 likes. Other than that, it's like 2, 3, 4. You know, and I'm like, is anybody out there? Hello, is anybody?
I'm screaming into the ether.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, what is it? I mean, obviously they want to try to goad you into paying for boosts now. Yeah. And that's Meta, Facebook, Instagram. They're all connected at this point. But obviously I know that they're trying to pay you to get you to pay for the boosts so that your posts reach more. And it's just like, once you get there, it feels like, is this going to be one of those, I pay for the first one and it does okay, but then if I pay for another one, it's not going to do as good because you want me to keep paying and set up myself up on a long-term, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, is my stuff not going to do good unless you're going to be guaranteed like hundreds of dollars from me?
Yeah, I don't even want to start. But yeah, I'm right there with you.
But I'm like, at that point, you would probably do better having Amazon boost your post or your book. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And that's what I told somebody. I was like, I don't think anybody realizes this, but like, depending on how your numbers are looking at any certain time, Amazon sends out emails with things recommended for you outside of because you just read on your Kindle or in your actual Amazon store.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I always guess that those people pay a lot of money to be recommended, you know. They ain't just going to I don't think anything organically gets recommended.
Yeah.
At least mine doesn't seem to be organically recommended to people. So
I'm dying in the ether of, I just found 4 new arcs because I'm finally in the spot on Threads that I want to be in. All of that to say, patience is a virtue that is good for everyone.
yes, absolutely.
And things will come as they should come. Your time may not be here yet, but it will be soon. And consistency is key.
Yes, absolutely.
And just remember that even though the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, you can still get different results on social media.
Here's hoping.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So other than the 3rd book in the series and your nonfiction, do you have any, maybe work in progress, but not really work in progress yet that you could tell us about?
Well, there's always little stories running around my head. Yeah, I mean, I have one that I'm hoping to get started on. I've really just really want to get this nonfiction book because it's a teaching based on, of course, stuff I've been through in my life and coming back from adversity, and it's really close to my heart because I really want to reach those people who are struggling, they might be right in the middle of their dark part of their journey, and don't necessarily see a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. And I really want to reach those people and tell them, to persevere in it, and you'll come through and come back stronger for coming through that. And anyway, long story short, once I finish that, I have another really cool adventure story, running around in there, of traveling realms and just different. It's really going to be hard for me even right now to get my mind wrapped around it. But travel through our realm to other realms, and the person traveling is sent, to help the people that they're traveling to their realm. But in that, they're growing growing in power, and they're growing in strength, and they're growing in maturity through them going into this new and different place that's completely different than our realm. So they have to learn how to navigate as a different people in a different realm, and do the task that they were tasked to do there. And so in that, there's strength and growth and understanding and power that comes through that. So I'm very excited to get going on that one, but it's going to be a little bit before there's actual writing going on. But it's going to be good. It's going to be really interesting. Anyway, are you familiar with Lord of the Rings? I'm sure you are.
Had the concept down. I couldn't watch it as a kid. It gave me the heebie-jeebies. I could probably watch it as an adult. I just haven't gone around to doing it.
Read the books.
I should do that.
I was that person that read the books, and then the movies came out. I saw them in the theaters. But there's a particular character in that book that Tolkien basically, Gandalf. You're familiar with Gandalf the Wizard, right? Yeah. He's not a person. He's not a human. He's a what's called a Maya, which is basically sent from heaven into this realm for a task to help Middle Earth withstand this evil that's coming. So he helps gather people and encourages them and strengthens them, getting them ready to fight this evil lord that's coming to try to take over the Middle Earth or whatever. So the concept that I had of this person going to different realms was this Gandalf type person that is sent to different realms for this task of helping the people in those realms.
So you get like the Gandalf point of view instead of the other way around. Okay, that would be so cool.
I'm very excited to write this. Like it really has been running around in my head for quite a while.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Getting it all down.
I'll be stalking you for that one.
Meanwhile, you could start with this one.
I mean, I'm gonna get those too. We'll go there too. I'm just letting you know I'm not limited. I'm not letting that idea go. I'll be returning. It's like, hey. I think that's all I've got.
Well, I appreciate you so much giving me the chance to talk about my process and to talk about books. I love it. I love talking about books.